So next I'm going to talk about what the left abandoned: rights without responsibilities. The welfare system was one of the greatest achievements of the 20th century. The principle that civilized society does not allow its members to starve, or to die of preventable diseases, or to be destitute in old age. That principle is correct. The argument is not with the principle, the argument is what has happened to it. So next I'm going to talk about how the safety net became a ceiling. A safety net catches you and bounces you back. What Britain has built, incrementally, with good intentions at every stage, is something different. It's a floor. And when the floor is high enough and comfortable enough, a significant number of people stop climbing. Not because they are necessarily lazy in some moral sense, but because the human animal optimizes for its environment. When the environment provides enough, the drive to provide more diminishes. That's not necessarily a failing, it's biology. And the policy question is, what kind of environment are we designing? In 2025-2026, the UK will spend £323 billion on the welfare system. 23.6% of all government spending, which is nearly a quarter. Over 5 million people are claiming welfare with no work requirements. 1 in 8 young people, which is 946,000, are NEET, NEET, not in education, employment or training. The number of working age people on incapacity benefits reached a post-financial crisis high of 7% in 2023-2024 and is forecast to reach an all-time high of 7.9% by 2028 to 2029. These are not numbers that describe a society where misfortune is being adequately caught by a compensation safety net. They are numbers that describe a society where a significant and growing number of people have been designed out of economic participation. The system that was supposed to support people toward independence is trapping a growing number of people into dependency. And the left, which built this system with the best of intentions, has been largely unwilling to say so because saying so feels like attacking the people the system was supposed to help. So next I'm going to talk about rights without responsibilities. The Progressive Project of the past 40 years has been, in significant part, a project of rights expansion. Rights are important, but the conversation about rights crowded out the conversation about responsibilities. Every right has a corresponding obligation. The right to housing creates an obligation not to damage it. The right to education creates an obligation to attend and to engage. The right to benefits creates an obligation to work towards not needing them. When the language of rights became the only language available and the language of obligation became politically toxic, the social contract lost one of its 2 pillars. The left also made a specific error on standards. In the name of inclusion and equality, it became hostile to the idea of a standard itself. Grading systems were softened. Discipline in schools became contested. The expectation that certain behaviours were unacceptable was reframed as cultural imposition. And in the communities that most needed clear standards, the ones where the family and community transmission of norms had already broken down, the removal of institutional standards left a vacuum. You cannot remove a standard without replacing it with something, and nothing is not a replacement. Nothing is just chaos with a more compassionate name. Next, I'm going to talk about benefits should not be a lifestyle choice. There is a sentence that used to be sayable and became politically difficult to say. So this channel is going to say it. Benefits should not be a lifestyle choice. The welfare system was designed as a safety net, temporary support for people in genuine hardship, with the direction of travel always pointing towards independence. At some point, the desire became to accommodate permanence. The language changed. Long-term benefits stopped being described as a problem to be solved and became a, quote, way of living, to be respected even. The cultural shift that followed is measurable in numbers already cited. 5 million with no work requirements, incapacity benefits heading for an all-time high, a generation of young people who have never had a job. This is not an argument against supporting people who genuinely cannot work. It is an argument about what the system communicates. When benefits are permanent and unconditional, the system communicates that not working is an acceptable long-term outcome. When benefits are temporary and conditional, when they carry an expectation of movement towards independence, the system communicates something entirely different. The expectation is not cruel. The expectation is respect. It says, we believe you can do better. We will support you while you get there. The removal of expectation says the opposite. So next I'm going to talk about the entitlement attitude. Entitlement is distinct from rights. Rights are the things that a society guarantees to its members in exchange for their participation. Entitlement is the expectation of those things without participation. It is the belief that what you have not earned is nonetheless owed to you by government, by employees, by the people around you, by life itself. The entitlement attitude produces a specific failure mode. The person who blames every obstacle on everyone except themselves, who explains every shortfall as evidence of injustice rather than as information about what needs to change, who meets feedback with grievance rather than adjustment. The entitlement attitude is not confined to any class or any community, and I think that's very important. It appears at the bottom of the income distribution and at the top. The wealthy sense of entitlement, that rules do not apply to you, that your position exempts you from ordinary accountability, is as corrosive as the benefits-dependent version. The difference is that the wealthy entitlement is largely invisible because it produces outcomes that look like success. The working class entitlement is visible in its consequences: unemployment, conflict with authority, relationships that collapse under the weight of unreciprocated expectation. So next I'm going to talk about benefits as a lifestyle choice. There is a sentence that needs to be said because it is true and because both sides of politics have been reluctant to say it. Benefits should not be a lifestyle choice. This is not an attack on people in difficulty. The safety net exists for a reason, and that reason is correct. The attack is on a system design that has made long-term dependency not just possible, but in some cases rational, where the calculation between working and not working, factoring in childcare, travel, and the loss of means-tested benefits produces a rationale for not working. That outcome was designed into the system. The system then expressed surprise when people chose it. The people who chose it are not stupid. They are responding rationally to the incentives they were given. The question is who designed those incentives and why they have not changed. The test of a good welfare system is not whether it provides support. Of course it should. It is whether the support is designed to move people through difficulty or to manage them within it indefinitely. A system that manages dependency rather than resolving it is not compassionate. It is administratively convenient. The difference matters enormously if you care about the person rather than the budget line. So next I'm going to talk about the denial of reality. A society that cannot answer basic empirical questions, not because the answers are genuinely contested, but because the answers have become politically inconvenient, is a society that has lost the ability to think clearly. The most visible example of this is the debate about biological sex. This channel respectfully states its position diplomatically but directly. Biological sex is binary, observable, scientifically established fact. The existence of gender dysmorphia is real, and dignity of every individual, regardless of their experience, is not in question. But a political culture that cannot distinguish between the empirical question, what is biological sex, and the ethical question, how we should treat people who experience gender differently, has confused two different conversations and made both worse. The wider problem is the pattern, not the specific example. When reality is denied because acknowledging it is uncomfortable, the policy built on that denial fails. When the evidence of what children need is set aside because it conflicts with preferred narratives about family structure, the children pay the price. When the evidence on outcomes is dismissed as culturally biased, the communities that most need evidence-based policy are the ones left with ideologically based policy instead. The progressive tradition, at its best, is empirical. At its worst, it bends the empirical to fit the ideology. The channel is for the empirical version of every argument, including this one. There is a particular failure of the progressive tradition that deserves naming precisely. When you lower the standard rather than helping someone meet it, when you pass a student who cannot read because failing them would damage their self-esteem, when you ignore antisocial behaviour because challenging it would criminalise poverty, when you excuse dysfunction because the person had a difficult life, you're not being kind. You are communicating that you do not believe they can do better. That is a form of contempt wearing the face of compassion. And the people it damages most are the ones it claims to protect.